growing up in a war, there's a lot of, you go through lots of bad experiences. You know, I can think of a lot of things, like when you're walking home from school and suddenly there's street fights and bombs going off, and they suddenly set a curfew and you have to run to, you know, the closest friend's house and stay there, and there's no way to call your parents.
Well, the incident that happened to me during the war was in 1983. The president of Lebanon had just been assassinated, and it was nothing but chaos in the streets. And I was home alone, the children were out, and my husband, who was a doctor, was at the hospital, probably sewing up casualties. And there was someone beating on the door with the butts of the Kalashnikovs very loud. You know, I thought about not answering it, and then I thought, well, maybe they'll break the door down. So I opened it, and there were two militarily dressed men. I assumed they were from a militia of some sort, and they demanded they were collecting all the men and boys in the neighborhood. For a reason I dared not think, but I told them the children were not there and my husband was away. And they said they wanted to search for weapons. I said, I don't have weapons here. And they said, we're going to look. You know, they spoke very broken English. So they started going through the house, pulling drawers out, dumping everything on the ground, on the floor, and they insisted there was something to be found. They went through every room, making a big mess. I was frightened, of course, but you know, we were sort of used to it. Lebanon was in deep chaos at the time. And I insisted we had nothing to hide. And eventually they left. They were going from house to house, looking for men and boys, whether to turn them over to some militia, I don't know, but this all took about an hour. They were going through the house, and that was rather frightening.
Remember the young man who used to come and deliver the newspaper every day at the door of the building, and the fighting had started, so we had some fighters that were on the street behind sandbags, and on the other end of the street we couldn't see them, but were the opponents, and the fighting was going on with machine guns and RPGs, and there were lulls and there were times where it was really much worse. And I remember that particular scene where it was sort of quiet, and I was peeking through, you know, we had the shutters, and I was peeking through, and I could see the street, and that kid came, and I guess he was from the other side, but he sort of ventured in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and so they caught him, and it ensued, you know, conversation, and you know, some high voices, and they were talking and everything, and then you know, it's really horrible because I'd seen him. He came every day, and then they told him, I assume they told him go, so he started running the other way, and when he got to the end of the street, they shot him, and he just dropped dead. He was dead on the ground, and I think his body stayed there for 2 or 3 days until, you know, somebody ended up taking him away. And I think that's the first time I saw somebody shot and killed, dead, right in front of my eyes. And as I said, I must have been 13 or something, and that was really very, you know, very traumatizing.
Well, there's another time, a difficult time, that my husband had. He had been at the hospital taking care of casualties. He was on his way home very late at night, and as he was driving back toward our house, he was stopped, which was common at the time, by these boys with guns. And there was the 12 or 13-year-old boy with his Kalashnikov. He put in my husband's face and said, "Where you go? Who are you? Where are you going?" And my husband was very tired, and he's quite bold. He said, "I've been sewing up your brothers in the hospital." And they took him in. He was being kidnapped. They took him in to this shabby little house.
They told me we are going to get the chief, who was going to decide your fate.
This boy took him in there, and he said, "Look, I found him on the street." So the captain, or whatever he was, said, "Who are you, and what do you do?" And he explained to them that he had been helping with the casualties that were coming into the hospital, and no doctor cares what side you're on. You just take care of the people. So finally, this captain, or the man in charge, said, "Well, we don't kidnap doctors," and they let him go. Well, anyway, he got the car back, and he went home. That wasn't the end of the story, but several years later, after the war, my husband was in his office with a patient. My husband was an obstetrician. It was a patient. He had delivered 11 babies for this couple, and this woman and her husband were sitting in his office, and my husband had never charged them because they were poor. This man was a taxi driver or something, and they were poor, and he never liked to take money from these people. So at the end of the visit, the patient said, "We want to tell you something."
And said, "You don't recognize me?" He said, I said, "No, I don't recognize you."
My husband didn't realize what he was trying to tell him, and then he turned and he said, "I was the captain that let you go on a certain street at a certain date when they brought you in, kidnapped, because I know that you are a humanitarian and you didn't deserve to be kidnapped."
I hugged him and say, "You saved my life."
the moral to this story is what goes around comes around. And because my husband was so kind to them in the past, that they were just as kind at that moment, that when he really needed someone to get him out of that bad situation.